We're on television.
All right.
On television.
All right, call to order the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Easthampton. Today's Thursday, June 9th, 2016. There's a few administrative items first. Public comments or public speak time. If there's anyone here to talk about anything other than the cases which are being presented today.
Yeah.
Never is. Good. Approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion for the April 14th, 2016 minutes?
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to abstain from the vote because I wasn't there.
Okay. And the...
Who's second?
I'll second it. There we go. Tony will second. The meetings from this meeting on the the minutes from the May 12th, 2016 meeting. That was the one we did at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, 4:30.
Here, 4:30.
Yes. I'll make a motion to approve this.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, Fran section. All in favor?
Aye.
I abstained again.
No, okay. We appreciate your abstention. Correspondences. Do we have any correspondences
Yeah,
from other boards?
Two decisions from the planning board. One's from 184 Northampton Street in regard to special permit. I think you guys had no comment when they asked you about it.
Correct.
And the
So
other was,
construction's already started on that.
yes. And the other's 84 and a half Cottage Street, which is a site plan approval decision for a new deli.
The Milltown Deli. Okay, which I guess is gonna have food at Cultural Chaos. Okay, if anyone cares to look at those, they are there. Okay. Six, what's that?
So before we go further, can we do meetings, just announce meeting scheduling, or do you want to do that at the end?
Why don't we do that at the end, just because it's very convoluted and construed, and we just need to make sure that everyone who says they're gonna be here is going to be here. All right, so our first hearing this evening is, and I'm sorry if I pronounce your names incorrectly at any point, Russell Brain and Elaine Hartley of 82 Park Hill Road, seeking a special permit in accordance with section 8.5 of the Easthampton zoning ordinance for the construction of an accessory apartment. Subject property is located at 82 Park Hill Road. Parcel ID is 117-2 and zoned residential rural CR35. Is there anyone here to speak pertaining that case?
I have some stuff.
Some stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Come forward and state your name so we know who we're talking to.
I am Russell Brain. And,
Okay.
Elaine is there, that's my mother.
Okay.
My sister just moved to Easthampton this month. My daughter moved here a few years ago, my grandson. And my mother, my father passed away 2 years ago. My mother's moving here with the rest of the family, and we're in the process of making her little nest that she's gonna live in.
Okay.
Which is what this is about. And there are, let me see, I only need 5.
That's okay.
What's
We
over-
can share.
I need one copy for the
Yeah.
record.
So there we go. We'll share the other four.
I think that's a set. And a set with the shirt. There might be, you know what, there's a double there somewhere, so. That's the little house. Oh, I have one. I put some pictures of the existing lot. The house will be sort of just to the right, like a big farmhouse.
All right.
Wasn't sure if I was good enough with Photoshop to try and.
Put it in there too?
This is what the builder supplies.
Okay.
The driveway obviously isn't gonna be that wide, it's gonna, you know, be as wide as the garage door, so.
Okay.
But essentially that's, well, it's not exactly what it looks like, because the roof pitch is different over the garage part, so. They tried.
They tried.
Yeah. And,
It also appears to be backwards from the elevation that's shown.
yeah, so we just told them to reverse it, and they haven't come up with this is the stamp plans that they were actually gonna use for permits, so they have to now get it re-stamped and re-engineered and all that stuff, so these things happen.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really good reason for that. Anyway, it's 800 square feet, which is The maximum allowed at the farmhouse is 2,800, or 2,600, I think, so we're within the 1/3 limit there,
Right.
so.
Can I ask a question to begin with?
Yes.
I read these regs and it says an accessory apartment is only permitted if it's within a single-family house or an attached.
Oh, no, they changed that. We had a,
Yeah.
there was a.
Well, I
something
don't-
like- Oh, here.
How long ago? Because I don't have it.
2014.
Here, I'll find it.
What's the date on your printing?
Mine is 2/13/14.
It was after you started, but,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely remember,
yeah. but-
Okay, because, all
do
right.
you have a bunch of like?
Yeah, I do, but I don't have one for accessory apartments.
She's eight.
All right, well then you can go on. I just,
I'll hand it over to you.
that was one big thing that I thought, why are we hearing this?
Now, the reason we decided to use the accessory apartment provision was because my mother feels strongly that she doesn't want to divide the farm or cause the farm to be divided in any way. And this was a way to keep the deed intact and whole. And so we downsized. We had a plan for a sort of a more normal sized house that would have meant we had to subdivide a little lot off, and that's not what she intended for this. So that's why we're doing this, and it's gonna be a cozy little house, I hope. It's very small. We laid it out on the grass with sticks and it looked really small. But, you know, the furniture all fits. so,
That's the key right there.
So if there's any other questions, and then there's the, you know, the little issue of the setback thing, which I brought the information on that as well.
I have a question about that too, because I looked at online at the tax maps, and the assessor has this lot as a separate lot on the tax map, and I think that's a legal question.
Well, it's taxed at a different rate from the rest of the.
But they
farm.
show it as a separate lot, and I think that's what the building official said, he thought this was a separate lot, and I don't know if I'm qualified to decide if the tax office considers it a separate lot, that it's not a separate
You don't
lot.
by any chance have a copy of your APR, do you?
I have it,
'Cause I've
and
got
you
your
have
deed.
it there.
I have your
That's-
deed, but not the APR.
Okay, you have the co-holders agreement right there in the package you gave me.
Oh, that was just tonight.
So,
Oh, sorry,
yeah,
okay.
I think Maggie sort of knows how this, here's the deed to the property right here, this is the embossed stamped one. It describes this lot only in one paragraph, that, the 2.87 acre tax lot that you mentioned is not in, of course, the deed anywhere. It's one paragraph here, it says, "A piece of land with the buildings thereon, bounded easterly by the highway leading over Park Hill, southerly over land formerly of L.D. Lyman, and land of the town of Easthampton, westerly by the heirs of Turner Joy, northerly by land formerly of Lucy Lloyd, containing about 30 acres more or less," which actually turned out to be 27.4 acres, so it was like very less. So, when land goes into APR, this document is created, the co-holders agreement, and this is owned partially by Easthampton. You'll see the signatures of the mayor and other people you recognize on here. Easthampton owns 12% of the conservation rights, and the Exhibit A in this is verbatim the description of the land from the deed.
Mhm.
In addition, there's one addition that's not in the deed, which is this page here, the one with the big Xed out portion, and it describes in this section the lot which is on the site map, which is this little postage stamp of the bigger. So the deed is this area,
Mhm.
and then this co-holders agreement describes this line here, which is in no way a property line. It is only, this is a plan on file with Hampshire, so when you sell your conservation rights, they file the plan in order to say that both things, that this land is taxed different from this land, and also that this land is buildable and this land is not buildable.
But can you sell the house lot separately?
No.
How
I
can you not
can.
sell the
I
house
could.
lot separately?
I
Can you?
subdivide,
Can you though?
only by subdividing.
But are you even allowed to do that?
It would have to go through Boston and they'd have to approve it.
Yeah, I don't know that, I mean, cause it's, so the way the APR is, the
And-
whole thing is in the deed, but then it's excluding,
Right, it's excluding that, I worked somewhat with these when I was in
Yeah.
Connecticut.
So if I
And
was
you
to,
could
if I
sell
was to
the-
subdivide this, and Easthampton also has right of first refusal, so,
But all East
Yours is
Hampton is
different.
concerned about is the farmland, not the house lot. I don't think we have any interest in the house lot as long as
But
someone
they-
continues farming the
okay,
farmland.
so the house is on this lot.
cause like,
The big lot.
I know for our APR, we can't actually split them, but I.
There's so many
If
different.
that's the way all APRs are, then it's not a lot, but because it shows up at a lot and it would
No,
appear.
see, in my understanding of the area that's marked out is that that way that portion is taxed as a quote-unquote residential lot.
Yes.
But it's not a different, it's not a separate lot, it's only.
It's not a separate deed.
It's no
Okay.
different than if you put a section of your property, if you went section, what is it, 62, where you do
61A.
61A, and where you donate part of it to property, public use or tree, farmland or things like that. That's all part of the same thing, but it's only taking a portion of your property.
As long as it can't be sold separately, then it's not a separate lot, and I don't
Right.
have any
Yeah.
objections at all.
Now, if I was to subdivide it and want to sell it separately, I would be non-conforming because of this setback that I'm proposing on this, and I would have to deal with that then. Like I said, the overriding thing with my family and my mother is that we don't divide the land in any way. This farm isn't usable if the house is sold separately. I can't imagine Boston would ever approve it because there's no way you could possibly run Parkville Orchard without the house and barns,
Right.
So, you'd have to be pretty darn greedy. I called Boston and talked with the APR people, that my contact there, and he said that they definitely do not intend there to be any setback on this area. They understand that this is a tiny little postage stamp of which you can build your necessary infrastructure to run your much larger property, because I have 125 acres surrounding this little 2.8 acres. It's the only buildable spot on the whole land is where this house might go, and maybe in this back corner, because there's a huge ravine on this side of it that takes away most of it. So it's going to be challenging to make it work over in the future for future owners and stuff like that. APR is pretty well aware of this. They still like to keep the borders as small as possible on the exclusion, because of course their overriding thing is protecting farmland.
Right.
So, but what's happened now is that farm viability, that their APR owners need some help, because it's hard to run a farm even if it's not an APR farm. So they're not trying to make it any harder, because they don't need their owners to go bankrupt. They need their owners to be able to live there and make a life. Yeah, so that's why I'm pretty firmly believe that I'm okay to site the house back against that line there. It gives a 50-foot space between the houses. We looked at it with a 30-foot space between the houses, and they look just so scrunched together, and you're in this huge open expanse of a field, and then these two houses would be just jammed up next to each other, and it would be very out of proportion for the scale of the setting. Even 50 feet off is a little out of proportion, but it's, Mr. Molatoris' house is across the street, his retirement house from Molatoris Orchard. So that's pretty nice. The two houses sort of face each other, and he's really on board with my mom coming there.
So your APR is written, well, mine's a really old APR. and we don't actually have a co-holders agreement, it's like a different thing. And it prevents our exclusion area from being separated from the rest of it. And I had just assumed that yours would be the same way, but it doesn't seem like it's written that way. Like, it seems like if you wanted to subdivide within your exclusion zone, that you could, but you think that you would need to get permission from Boston for that? Or,
Just to subdivide it, I would imagine,
like, within, because the way that I'm reading it.
I don't know if they would have to approve a subdivision or not. If I was to sell it, I think it's still under right of first refusal from Easthampton.
Cause it's like the way that I'm reading it, it seems like you could, in theory, sell your exclusion zone without selling your agricultural land.
Yeah.
Does that, cause if you feel like that's not right, like that you thought that you weren't allowed to do that, I feel like we should, look more into exactly, like, if you have, I don't know if there's anything else, but it just, like, what I'm reading here makes it seem like, the state and Easthampton have a claim to your APR land, but like have agreed to not tie up your exclusion zone, which is just different than what I was expecting.
They told me my wording was old. There's like so many different APR contracts.
My APR is from 1987.
Wow, okay, this is
Yeah.
99.
Yeah. But so when you went through this process with the state, did you get any feedback about whether or not you were permitted to, like, whether you could have bought one part without the other part? Because the thing is that your farm is not viable without having the exclusion zone, because,
The only thing they did before closing was they said that the price the seller was selling the APR land was too high. It was over the
Right,
CPI
yeah.
or whatever, and they made them lower the price,
mhm.
which
Yeah.
is what APR is supposed to do.
Right, yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, it certainly was conveyed to you altogether.
I would be surprised if they wouldn't at least, I can't imagine that APR wouldn't have at least a sign off on that,
But if the APR signed off on it, they don't care about Easthampton setbacks.
if
I mean, that's my concern, that.
Well, with this house built on what would now be a legitimate setback, but if I was to subdivide, it would be non-conforming to me and to our family, actually, we talked about this, that would be another roadblock that would maybe keep this land from ever being subdivided. You see, because we're also have in mind to keep this farm intact. My grandson's growing up in Easthampton at Center Pepin, and I have in mind for him to have the farm. So,
Oh, yeah, so how much, what amount of frontage does the exclusion have?
I think if we added these numbers right, we could actually come up with the exact feet. I just had the surveyor for the site, when they made the site plan, the surveyor came in, there's markers all over there now.
312, so.
313 plus 364. I think 313 plus 364.
Okay, so plenty for,
677,
Yeah, but if you just look at the exclusion zone,
right, I just want to know the frontage of the exclusion zone.
so you're roughly, 312 plus 119, there is 3.
Because often they make them just small enough that you can't actually split them. They did that with ours.
Can't subdivide.
Like,
Yeah.
that it doesn't actually make 2 building lots.
Oh, you need 100 feet.
In we're there? We need, I think they need more. Yeah.
R35 has more.
Yeah.
R 34 frontage needs 120.
Oh, yeah, because, so 120, so you have enough
Yeah.
that you could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be weird if I subdivided a lot and then it fell into somebody else's hands. The farm would just be so weird for somebody else's property right there.
Yeah.
As it was, the house down on the corner next to Echo Hill used to be part of my farm and it went to a separate family.
there's plenty of square footage for a lot, but,
Do you know if there's anything I could file and voluntarily lock them together forever? Could I have a lawyer write that up and register it in Hampshire County?
I don't know,
Yeah,
I would think
you
so.
could do whatever you want, it's your.
I mean, would
Like
that
have a
help?
covenant
Would that help with what we're trying to do here?
It would help for me, just because like I feel like if they can't be separated, like if the deed can't be separated, then it doesn't matter anymore. Like then I feel very, very comfortable looking at it as the parcel is what the deed says it is, as opposed to the parcel being for, you know, for tax purposes, something different.
Mhm.
I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, that would be fine, because I think I know you don't intend to ever divide it, but we don't know 10 years from now if something happens and it has to be sold, if someone else
Right.
might want to sell it, and if
But-
there's something on the
but you're-
land records that
That's
can't be.
because this would be a non-conforming, it would be in the set-aside then.
Right,
zone then.
right, that's all.
But we can't decide whether or not a house can go in by what.
And that's
Never
actually
mind
exactly what we
happen.
do.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
totally what we do. Well, I mean, that's what the zoning does. Like, that's the purpose of having zoning is basically to like set rules to prevent, or not to prevent, to set rules so that like development happens in a certain way, sort of regardless of what people's opinions or like what might be like most advantageous to them at any given moment, so that there's like this consistency across time. And so, like what happens, so for example, like if somebody is living in like an old house on a little lot in like a pretty dense area and they've got, say, a garage, and it was there before the zoning, and it's all up in the, you know, the setbacks and everything, the city doesn't make them take it down, even though it doesn't sort of fit with what's allowed anymore, but then if they wanna go and knock it down, and then they would lose the opportunity to have a garage. And so zoning definitely takes away like people's flexibility to do things. And I guess it's like the social contract, like people decide that they want the zoning so that the city stays nice, even though for like individual landowners, it means that you can't do things. So the concern is,
So, but does it matter what the rules are as they apply right now, or does it matter with what we could imagine
Right.
might ever change the
No.
rules?
so, well, the reason why I mean, right now,
Right now, it's conforming as the site plan is drawn up,
well,
and you're imagining that in the future it might become non-conforming in
No,
some
it's
form
not,
or another.
to me, the site plan doesn't conform to zoning, because I see your exclusion area as a separate parcel.
Right.
Because it can be sold separately.
Right.
So your new building does not comply with setbacks.
right.
Now, if that exclusion line did not exist, no problem, now that
Or-
Maggie's given me the new regulation.
Or if the deed couldn't be split so that it really was, like, cause right now, the way that you are looking at it is the exclusion zone is just there for tax purposes, like it just tells the assessor, like, this is the part that you can tax, you know, at full value, and then the rest of it is the part that you can tax, only at agricultural value. And because you haven't split it, like, you're just looking at it that way, but while it's not I don't know whether the assessor would mark this, but for example, like, another person could have a you know, like a large parcel and have an area around their house and have put a bunch of their land into chapter 61, and then have, you know chapter 61? Yeah, okay. And then have their house there, and for assessor purposes, like, I don't know whether that shows up on the map the same way, but for assessor purposes, it does the same thing, right? Like, the assessor is allowed to only tax the 61 land at the 61 rate, and then they have to tax the house at like the different value, but there's nothing about that land that can't be subdivided that makes it any different than somebody who's got, you know, a 5-acre parcel in an area where you only need, you know, 2 acres to have a building lot. And so, because it doesn't look like the APR requires them to stay together, the exclusion zone feels like a separate lot because it could be separate and it could be divided, if that makes sense.
Do you wanna, ask the city solicitor for an opinion on this?
I mean, we
like,
could certainly,
if-
we could certainly do that.
Because I know there's a lot of
Yeah.
uncertainty as to.
I mean,
Well,
the other thing too is, I don't know if you've been talking to at the state, but you could also ask the Department of Agricultural Resources if, if they have, because my understanding is like, there have been like different generations of APRs, and they have like established ways of interpreting the different generations of APRs. And so, for example, if the Department of Agricultural Resources has taken a position that a co-holder agreement like this one doesn't allow you to separate them, and you could get something in writing from the Department of Agricultural Resources saying that the position of the Department of Agricultural Resources is that what this means is that you can't separate it, that would also, I think, be
Yeah,
helpful.
that would
Yeah.
satisfy me.
Yeah.
So you're saying that even though it's one deed and there's a 20-foot setback
Right.
on that plan that's not a deed because of something that might happen in the future?
But that's what we have to look for.
Okay, I
Because-
understand. I
Because
was just-
we
I
can't
see what
guarantee.
you're saying, I see what you're saying though, you're
Because I
saying.
lose about 3/4 of an acre of my buildable little postage stamp
Right.
if this is the case. So this is a pretty important ruling to me.
So, you know what I'm suddenly, I mean, I think the issue is that if you, well, yeah, because they are already set out as separate things on the tax map. Because, okay, so let's, I'm just like.
I think your
bear with me for-
question of going to the state and asking for an opinion, and Jamie's suggestion that she go to the city solicitor, I think we should get both.
Yeah.
Because-
I'm just,
What were you
well,
gonna
I'm just trying to think through, like, if we're treating it differently than we would treat, because like,
No, because we have to make decisions based on what might happen in the future, and we have because we have to treat everybody alike. And if this lot is a separate lot and can be sold separately, then this doesn't conform, so we can't approve it.
but
And I think-
I'm not sure whether, I'm not sure though, is our, really should our standard be, can it be sold separately, because because I don't think it is, because if it was a 5 acres and there was enough to split it, but they weren't needing a change to the setbacks, they could do the accessory apartment regardless, even if they could later split it, and right now it is on one deed, you know, like.
No, I don't think it
Can I-
is.
Can I just?
Oh, it definitely is on one deed.
But that's-
Can
I
I
don't-
just clarify, just what I think you're getting at is that typically you need an A&R, an approval not required plan, to subdivide a lot. So if you have one lot that's shown by the assessors, shown on parcel property deeds and things like that to be one lot, then you can't split it without going through another process, which is subdivision plan process through the planning board. And they won't allow you to subdivide if you can, like, they're not gonna allow you to subdivide and make it non-conforming.
I see.
But if, in this case, if this is one lot, then in the future, they won't be able to subdivide on that line, because that's not
Oh.
really a subdivision line.
Like our very action could make it non-subdividable?
No, they would just have to, you'd have to, if it's already subdivided, because it's shown as, the question whether or not it's shown as 2 lots, is it already 2 lots, or is it really one lot in common ownership that can't?
It's all one lot in common ownership.
Well, I disagree.
Maybe
I'm
we
not
need a
explaining.
different, but, well, except that it's not, so, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're saying is if there's a lot and it could be subdividable, but they've done something on it that makes it so that if they were to divide it, the 2 pieces would no longer be conforming. They wouldn't be able to subdivide it.
There's
But
a
I
lot,
think-
there's a
Yeah,
lot, there's a
for
lot, there's
variance.
a lot of
Nitty gritty.
nitty gritty, but if, assuming you have a 5 acre lot that
Mhm.
requires 100 feet of frontage, and you can subdivide that and get 2 building lots out of it, so you have 200 feet of frontage, you can just come to the planning board and get asked to subdivide the land. If the lot is already subdivided, the assessors or the registries already have it as 2 lots, there's already 2 separate deeds for it that's already been subdivided, even though it's in common ownership,
Mhm.
you don't have to go back to the board
Right.
to get that approval, because that approval's already been granted. So I guess what
But what I'm arguing is if you have that, say, 500 acres, and we allowed someone to put a house right next to the existing property boundary on that 500 acres. Then they wanted to divide it into two parts. We have created a nonconformity,
Well, so,
and I think that's what we'd be doing here.
Right, I mean, so we can do, if you, our zoning doesn't allow multiple structures on, multiple principal structures on a lot.
Right.
There are definitely lots that are, 100 years old, 2 or 3 buildings on it. If you wanna subdivide it so that they're in separate ownership, and you do your best, but sometimes you can't make lot bound, there's already a building on it, it's already non-conforming.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can get the frontage requirements, but you can get the acreage requirements, so you can get, so they may have to get a variance, or they may have to, and for things that, for buildings that predate zoning, there's, other laws that allow this to happen outside of the city zoning.
Mhm.
So, you're kind of creating your own nonconformity here. If,
But at the moment, the deed is just one, I mean, the deed is definitely one piece right now.
But it describes two parts, the taxable part.
No, it doesn't actually, the deed doesn't. If you look at.
Well, how do they know what's,
Because they have the co-holders agreement, which is not a deed.
which, have a what?
This is the co-holders agreement, this is the APR, but the deed, this is the
Okay.
deed. This is what I got from the Mass Land Records. So the deed is actually, and it's interesting too, because the deed isn't even referenced, like no, that's the plan. Yeah, they have deed, okay, so, but this is the deed, and the deed has tracks, but it's one deed.
Yeah, but one deed can convey more than one parcel. As you said, it
Right.
has tracks. So those-
But the tracks aren't reflected on the assessors. I mean, well, actually they are, I guess, but is a tract,
But
I see what you're saying.
You can convey 10 lots in one deed. Piece 1, piece 2, piece 3.
Right, although most of I guess what's interesting is, so the deed has the tracks. And one of the tracks includes both APR land and non-APR land. Like there is no tract in the deed that matches with the
As long-
exclusion zone.
Why, I make a motion to postpone this a month and have Mr. Braun try to get something from Boston and Jamie try to get something from the solicitor. I don't think, and if nobody makes a second to my motion, I'll withdraw it, we can vote. I mean, we're getting nowhere and I don't wanna spend 2 hours on this.
What
I see Maggie and I are the only ones interested, so I'll make a motion that we postpone.
Where are other people at with, I guess, does anybody want a second motion?
Well, I think we need, okay, I will second it for the sake of discussion, okay?
Well, if you're seconding the motion, then we're ending discussion, and we're waiting on that.
No, you can have discussion after the motion.
That's true, okay,
Yeah.
and then we vote on whether or not to do it.
I need to catch them.
What is this? This is the co-holders agreement.
Right.
Further exception. Does the further exception then make that section of separate building law? How does that, or is that just to differentiate the tax purposes?
Well, this isn't a deed,
No, this is the co-holders.
so
But it's filed on the land records, right?
it is.
It's actually defining the opposite, the inverse, it's defining the conservation land. So that is an exclusion to what it's defining actually.
Okay.
So it's saying that all the lands under permanent agricultural preservation except this little piece of one of the tracts. And it's a site plan that's on file with Hampshire.
And so it's just the site plan portion to then differentiate the quote-unquote residential portion of the lot and the agricultural portion.
Yeah, in practical reality, it's where you can build a barn.
Yeah,
versus
because
where
this
you
is the
can't.
thing, because it's not just the house, because if you look at, it's where all of their structures are,
Right.
and they're not allowed to put new structures without getting permission on the agricultural land. So
Right.
it's, yeah.
So if that's the case, hear me out.
the only place he can put it is within that lot.
Correct.
So if the only place he can put it is within that lot, and the entire property is designated as preserved farmland in that state, it doesn't benefit anyone to subdivide it, because you couldn't subdivide it and make it a residential area because it's been preserved.
No, but some guy down the.
No, I think what John's getting at is like, there's never gonna be an issue with a setback to another, like the off of the lot line, there's never gonna be an issue with like it being.
Right,
next
but
to
it's
something.
still,
Right,
but it's
because
still a lot line.
No,
It doesn't,
but all it is it's the definition of the confirmed agricultural area and the space in which the owner of this residential, of this farming property, or whatever agricultural property, is allowed to build a structure. And if that's the case, then it's all one lot. The only, it can never be subdivided because it's all been deemed agricultural.
I see what you're saying.
Does that make sense?
No, I know what
At least
you're saying.
that's how I'm understanding the agreement with the state, the agreement with the city, and the deed. That basically the entire property is deemed agricultural. This portion is the part that he's allowed to build in, and there's no sense in ever thinking of it being subdivided because it can't be considered a residential property.
Would your counterparts in the future be responsible for deciding if it was subdivided? I can't imagine
I don't
it.
think that would be us, I think it's planning board.
Yeah, but, I mean, if it's deeded by the state as agricultural, it has to stay agricultural, because it's in perpetuity.
Yeah, I'd never heard the exact sharp question that Maggie had, is it subdividable? We had always just assumed that they were locked together.
Well, and
And
that's
there
my
there might be a basis for that assumption.
And certainly APR has led us to believe that, but I can't
Right.
cite a document saying it. But
Well, and is it beneficial to confirm what we're thinking, that it is a single lot? Is it beneficial to have either the city solicitor to look at it, or,
I don't think it's gonna change.
I don't think it's gonna change either, but just to confirm our ruling in that essence? Maggie's keeping reading.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that, that the folks who wrote the co-holders agreement ever thought that they could be separated from one another. And there's lots of references in here to like chapters and sections that I don't have in front of me. But I don't know, but I'm feeling pretty good about the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, those,
No, it seems pretty straightforward.
well, why don't you make a motion?
But we still have one motion.
we still have a
Oh,
motion.
we still
on the
have a
floor.
motion, that's right.
So first we're.
Okay, well then, you wanna have people vote on my motion that we postpone it a month?
Okay, and so if the motion that's on the floor is to postpone it a month. A yes vote is to postpone it, a no vote is to not postpone it. So all in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? It is opposed. Okay, yeah, we have a motion to approve.
Can 6 of us vote, or can only 5 legally vote?
Oh God, that's the thing. No, you're right, I think that's true.
Yeah.
You want rock, paper,
Okay, so,
scissors?
it's the four
Yeah.
members, and then it's between Maggie
Alright.
and Fran.
Yeah, I'll step back.
Okay.
Okay.
Let Maggie do that.
Okay.
Thank you for catching that. That would have been-
Been forgotten. Okay,
You
so,
could have called me and been like, do you know, you're not really an assistant member, you're an associate member, but I told you that story.
Associate.
jeez. Okay, so, I will make the motion?
Sounds
Okay,
good.
I will make a motion to approve the special permit in accordance with section 8.5 of the Easthampton zoning ordinance for the construction of an accessory apartment
on 82 Park Hill Road, parcel ID 117-2 and zone residential rural CR35. Do you want,
I was just gonna say there was one more, we got some more comments from
Oh, yeah.
Board of Health.
It was about water capacity.
oh,
And we also got comments from the city engineer.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry,
this-
these are the
Okay,
two,
the
these were the two.
here we already saw. This
We
is
already,
new.
we already saw these.
Yeah,
You
those
said
were
it.
two that I emailed out, but I got this one yesterday, so I didn't have time to email it out to the board. I just wanted to-
the septic design.
Oh, that's,
So,
that's
should we
from the
just like summarize it?
conservation commission.
Okay, so do you want, Jim, do you want these
I
referenced?
need them back,
Okay,
but
do you
if
guys
there's,
need to reference them, or?
if there's nothing to discuss about it,
Wait,
then there's no need to discuss it, but
Is that the septic plans that?
You got a septic plan? It's-
She made it with Hilltown Environmental, they made an agreement, but the drawings haven't been made yet, waiting for this.
Right.
To transpire.
Yeah, but it's,
so.
you know, that there's
Jackie's on
there's an
board.
approach to revise the
Yeah.
septic to make
We're
it
gonna
better.
add one run to the leach field,
Okay.
give us an
Right.
8-bedroom capacity. You have to add 3 bedrooms capacity for a 1-bedroom accessory apartment. so.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, the way that you're doing your utilities definitely reinforces that there is no intention to subdivide.
Yeah.
Because
True.
sharing a septic and sharing a water line would not be
Yeah,
the way to go if you were going
Right.
to
yeah,
subdivide.
that does create other problems. So, okay.
There was a-
Second that one.
Just to dot i's, there was a question from the city engineer, thank you for mentioning that, because I had thought about it, just about like whether you have enough, water service, like, is your water service sufficient to service both?
Okay, so, several years ago, I had my 1/2-inch meter upgraded to a 3/4-inch meter,
So you're good.
which they did to, yeah, as you know, 3/4-inch has a lot, like 3 times the feet of a 1/2-inch. It meant to serve the entire farm. I subsequently put in a 2-inch into, when I put new service into my farm stand. So I actually have tons of.
Yeah, you got water.
Hey, you got more water.
Better way over.
Tony, we good? It helps that we have all these references
You
right
for an
now.
apartment building.
just to dot all the i's.
Yep.
Just, you wanna go through the standards in section?
Yeah, we just,
Okay.
so
Okay.
yeah, so it's,
Oh, yeah, we need to.
it's,
What's
11,
what is it, 11?
It's 8.5 is accessory apartments.
but it's 11 is where this was.
Yeah, but we need 8.5 just to confirm the accessory apartment.
Right, there you go.
All right.
And then if you can pass those comments back in.
This is straight down to 8.5, correct?
Mhm.
So, just to make sure we confirm everything, the purpose of the accessory apartments is to provide older homeowners with the means of obtaining through tenant and necessary apartments rental income, which is, I don't believe is applicable because it's an in-law apartment.
That's right. I understand, as I understand it, if it does ever hit the rental market, I would have to go through another procedure with some board of Easthampton to get a rental license or something like that, but actually, I'm supposed to move into it, my daughter's supposed to move into the big house. At least that's how my neighbor's farms work.
The accessory apartment, you can rent it out to anyone you want. It's only, the only thing is that the owner has to either live in the principal unit, principal structure, or in the accessory structure. You can't rent both.
Right. The owner must be on site.
So, I'm just thinking out loud about like what else we can do, like what, like the effect of what we're doing here is by giving a special permit for it as an accessory apartment, also binds it to all of the requirements for a accessory apartment.
And a single building lot.
Right, so,
That just confirms it even more.
just to mutter around.
Okay. So it's only one apartment is created, it's located and meets the minimum lot size requirements. The owner of the residence which accessory is located shall occupy at least one of the buildings, and separate housekeeping functions as a separate unit from the original unit. Now, separate housekeeping, does that mean
Kitchen.
Just kitchen?
Sanitary, kitchen, bath, and,
Okay, but the fact that it links water and,
and what it means is that you can't have an accessory apartment that doesn't have a bathroom, or
Okay.
doesn't have a stove, or doesn't have
Okay.
a fridge, or doesn't have a sanitary facility.
Kitchen, everything.
right, it's gonna look like a one-family residence as much as feasibly as possible.
Although that is different from what E,
What is this?
I mean, E is, but E, I feel like didn't get updated when the other part got updated.
Well, that's another issue, we're not going there
Because,
tonight.
okay, I'm just saying, like, when we read, I'm just saying, when we read E, we have to read it in light of the fact that they made the change to allow a separate structure.
What's the second part of E? You keep reading. Is there something about?
No, it's F that talks about it.
Okay.
E probably should have been slightly revised in light of F, but only F was revised.
Okay.
That's,
The-
we're not gonna worry about E because of F.
Okay, so F overrides E, what is this, algebra now?
So, yeah, so just so everybody's on the same page, E says that you're supposed to have it so that the appearance of the building remains that of a one-family home. Obviously, if you're putting it in a separate structure, that's not
So that
like
makes
that.
sense.
And then F has the same dimensional criteria apply to an accessory apartment constructed in, but that's,
That's part of the new detached.
oh,
building.
or as part of thank you, or an accessory apartment constructed as part of a new detached dwelling.
Right.
So, we're good on the new detached dwelling.
Okay, and it can be no greater than a third of the existing residential space or 800 square feet, whichever is less, which is,
We're at 796.
put smaller overhangs on the house, you can. At least 2 off-street parking spaces are provided. For dwellings that's serving on one septic system, the owner must be, we've already addressed that at the Title V issue. And the construction of any accessory apartment must be in conformity with state building codes, which is standard procedure. Okay, so that covers that. Now, special permits.
I have the page.
Oh, yeah. Special permit application, and,
Oh, no, that is.
yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So we have the name of the project, we know where it is, the address on the record. The address, the property, all of the abutters were notified?
Yeah.
You're looking at the submittal requirements.
Oh, that's the submittal?
Yeah,
Where's the approval?
Go to it's a
Sorry.
couple pages later.
Here we go.
Oh.
I thought it was on.
Alright. I'm gonna borrow this. Start
When you
reading
do the
it.
findings, will you just mention that we have the stamped plans, but the garage is, like, that it needs
It's
to
the
conform
reverse.
with the stamped plans except. Yeah,
Does that make sense?
It's
Kim?
mirror day.
yeah.
It's a mirror, the submitted drawings are a mirror
Yeah,
of what is being built.
but the envelope, the building envelope still change.
Correct.
Oh.
So as long as the building envelope
Yeah.
doesn't change, then
Right. I just wanna make sure, cause
Yeah.
there's the language about like, it includes any drawings as submitted. I just wanna make sure that like, we don't create problems by not documenting that we know. Anyway,
Okay.
that's all.
So, special permit criteria for approval. 1, conformance of the provisions ordinance of the city of Easthampton, which we've done. Protection of city amenities and abutting properties through the minimization of any detrimental or offensive use. Doesn't. Minimization of traffic or safety impacts for proposed development. Not necessary. Adequacy of the methods of disposal of sewage and refuse. Has been addressed. Adequate means of protecting wetlands. Not applicable. Mitigation of adverse impacts of the city resources, including effects of the city's water or distribution system. So we can address. Provisions for off-street loading and unloading of vehicles incidental to the normal operation and establishment. It's fine. Applicants' efforts to integrate the development into the existing landscape, which I think you've done a great job. Minimization of the area over which existing vegetation is to be removed. Are you gonna remove any trees in order to put this in?
There's one apple tree that's orphaned in the front yard, which we haven't decided yet.
You'll need to talk to the tree warden.
Well,
Unless, as agricultural, you may be exempt, which I don't know.
I wonder.
I don't know. That is a good question.
I never thought that, but I always considered that to be on the farmland, but it
Right.
turned out it wasn't.
But, Okay, they
So does
consist,
that tree have to come down, or?
I don't believe it does.
oh, as long as it doesn't have to go down, come down, as long as it doesn't have to come down, you don't have to consult the tree ward.
You get some guy driving an excavator out there and he's gonna be like, take that tree out of my way.
Well, you can also have it protected
Yeah.
if you wanted to.
We can leave it there.
The consistency of the development with respect to setback area, placement of parking, architectural style, and landscaping of the surrounding buildings and development. You're gonna do the best to make it look like it fits. Adequacy of the measures to prevent pollution of surface or groundwater, to minimize erosion or sediment, and the minimize changes in groundwater levels, increased runoff, or potential of flooding. It's a flat lot?
Yeah, well, it's Park Hill.
Yeah.
Nothing's flat.
Adequacy of the methods to ensure that the use will not constitute a nuisance by reason of unacceptable level of air or water pollution, excessive noise, or visually flagrant structures, not fragrant, and accessories.
You don't get a real lot of architectural choices on a small house like this.
Just on that last, like, the runoff thing, I feel like, we've got, like, the Concom sign off of,
Yeah.
like, this is not within their purview, which doesn't really, I know it doesn't really affect the runoff stuff, but,
I mean, it's just, all they're saying is that it's not near a wetland or a river or stream. It's not within their jurisdictional area. They're not looking at any other aspects of, you know, they didn't even look at, I assume they didn't even realize that they
They've, like,
pulled the.
had
the lots
opinions
of-
before.
It's a single family
Yeah, I
house,
don't
we don't
know.
regulate runoff on a single family house.
Yeah.
Only if it's more than, there's a certain amount of disturbance for
Right.
stormwater permitting.
Right.
But an 800 square foot house is
Yeah.
probably.
But no,
If you-
it's like 10,000 square feet.
A lot of the verbiage that's in here
Yeah.
is designed for development type of approvals, not for a single family house. But we have to go through the entire list. Okay,
So there's still a motion on the table.
I'm looking for a
I'll
second.
second.
Okay, Maggie will second. Any further discussion? Okay, Fran, you're stepping back? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion
Motion
carries.
passes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you.
Thanks, it's a real important thing for my family, and we're looking forward
You
to
wanna
it.
Oh, yes.
20 days?
Okay, we have,
Oh, yeah, I was-
I have 20 days to, or Jamie and I will get together and you have 20 days, or you have days, we will have an approval or a letter written with the, probably by the end of next week, at which point the 20-day
Appeal.
appeal period, once it's stamped by the, will begin, provided no one raises any appeal.
Mhm.
At that point, it will be stamped and registered with the county.
As I understood it, the company could approach the permit department on the beginning of that.
Yes, you
Yes.
can
20-day
start
period
before
on
it's
our own
final,
risk,
but it's at your own
basically.
risk,
Yeah.
exactly.
But the building inspector may not grant you the permit
Until the 20 days are
until
over.
20 days are over.
Okay.
It's discretionary on his part whether or not he grants the permit and you work at your own risk,
Yeah.
or whether or not you just work at your own
And
risk.
they'll probably put it in there like, we're ready. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
I'm downsizing for sure.
Get a copy of that accessory apartment, please?
I'll see you guys another day.
Like my husband, aren't you?
I will. I'm sure you see me there.
Alright,
Bye. Hope your house turns out well.
Minutes to send to-
Sarah?
Hi. How's life and education?
It wasn't chickens.
Jamie, you got copies of everything, right?
Yes.
You got the co-owners?
I got 3 separate or 4 separate
Okay.
packets from
Perfect.
the rest
Just
of
making sure.
Okay. Are we ready for our next contestant?
Sarah, ready?
Okay. Sarah Kroll?
Yes.
Okay, 27 Old Pelham Road, Belchertown, seeks a special permit in accordance with section 10.4 and 11.1 of the Easthampton zoning ordinance for a major home occupation, photographer studio, and for extension of a pre-existing non-conforming accessory structure. Subject property is located at 36 Briggs Street, parcel ID 145-203, and zoned residential suburban B R10. Sarah, what can you tell us?
Well, so the first thing I'm asking for is for the major home occupation for the business.
Mhm.
And then that would necessitate me building a studio on the backside of the garage.
Okay.
So, did you guys get this letter?
Yes.
Okay, so it's quiet, I don't have employees, there would be no signage, I don't have retail sales, it's just me, I photograph pregnant women and babies. It's a very like subdued, quiet little thing that I do. I would wanna put the accessory structure on the back side of the garage, so, I mean, from the street, it really wouldn't look too much different. You might see like a foot more above, and then there's plenty of room in the back.
So it's gonna be taller than the existing garage?
Yeah, I mean, like maybe a foot.
Okay.
When I was trying to measure the garage, the tape
Tape
kept falling over.
I understand.
It kept falling, so I'm like, I think it's like 17 or 18 feet. I couldn't get the specifics. They're gonna be so close together in height,
Mhm.
we're talking maybe a foot difference. And from what I understand, the height limit is 25 feet.
Mhm.
It's nowhere near that. What else can I answer for you?
With no retail at the house?
No retail.
Just bring back your photography
Right.
equipment and do your thing?
Yeah, and a lot of times, I mean, I just have whatever they order, I have it shipped directly to them.
Oh, I see.
So, I mean, and I don't have any kind of, shop area or anything.
Okay.
like that.
One question that did come up was whether you're going to be doing any actual film developing there.
Nope. That was from back
Okay.
in the day.
Yeah.
I miss those
I-
days.
I-
I'm from that time.
Yeah.
It's all digital.
So no Polaroid cameras anymore, huh?
Not anymore. I have it on my shelf, but it's just.
I look at all those little black containers that
Oh, God, you have
film
no
come in,
idea.
and kids have no idea
I
what those
know.
are.
And photographers that have never had to develop film, never had to worry about their exposure, well, I could go on.
Oh, yeah. You know? No, don't put that in the X-ray machine.
And at airports, used to be the worst, yeah.
Yes.
So no, it's all very straightforward. and simple.
I have clarification from the board, because I know this amendment was done before me, and I don't remember us talking about it. Because I consider this a residential use, and so it has to comply with the residential, it's a non-conforming garage, and so the addition.
Correct.
So when the regulations say that if the ZBA finds proposed changes would not significantly intensify any existing nonconformities,
I think I'm the reason for
or
that.
create new because this is a new nonconformity, but it's less than existing, and that's what this means.
Basically, what it
Okay.
is
I assumed
if
that's
you-
what it meant.
Yeah, if you were 10 feet, or if you were 5 feet from the property line in a 10-foot setback, and you wanted to then maintain that 5 foot, or be
Less than.
yeah, right, then that's where the challenge is.
Okay, that's what
As long as you're gonna be, if it started at 5 and you went all of a sudden up to 6, you're fine.
okay, well, that's what I assumed, but this
I
wording is not, okay.
Yes.
I don't have any problem with this at all.
That was what the challenge was. Okay. The major home occupation, the only reason for that is because it is technically a photography studio. Correct.
And she has customers
And you have
come.
customers coming.
People come to me, and it's one client at a time, maybe a couple, husband, wife, but it's one at a time.
One would hope
So
they'd come the same
parking and
vehicle.
all
One
that?
would hope. yeah.
So parking's not an issue at all? You'll have
Yeah, I mean, well, the
room
drive,
for another car or?
yeah, the driveway itself is 87 feet long, and then my partner is a teacher, and I keep regular business hours, so during the day, it's just my car there anyway.
Yeah.
And then this little spot here, from this edge to that edge is probably 18 feet. I mean, 2 cars could park side by side right here, and then my car could be up front.
Hurt your partner's cars at work.
Exactly.
At school, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Did you live there now, Or
No,
this is you would be buying?
We're buying it and we close, on the 23rd. Yeah.
So you probably you don't happen to know whether your neighbor over here lives at the house, you don't know?
They live there.
They do, okay,
Yeah.
it is owner occupied, and they've chosen not to be here tonight, so
Yes.
that's always,
Yeah,
it's always a nice thing.
Yeah, obviously, you know, the 300-foot radius,
Right.
everyone was notified, so,
There's no change in the front, it's just
yeah.
a small back
Mhm.
addition.
It's a bigger garage.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll sit
Yeah, you could
this
just
one out.
continue. No, you're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. He's the lawyer, not me.
Okay. Can we get a motion?
Have we gone?
Do we
All the-
do we want to go through all the, application, make sure we cover everything? I think that was the only, just the stormwater or the wastewater was the only question that I saw.
Yeah,
And there's nothing.
there's two sets of standards on the home occupation.
And there's no
3.3
plumbing in the
3.5.
structure.
Right.
Right. Okay, so no plumbing, just electricity.
Correct.
That was the other question.
There's the home occupation, is like
Here,
five, so-
the home occupation, we have new wording, and I do have that. I just didn't have accessory apartment.
That-
Standards for major home occupations.
Oh.
But there's also
We have to go through
the,
All.
it's two parts, because there's all home occupations and then major home occupations.
And that's in the page before that.
Standards for all home occupations. The owner operator of every home occupation shall reside in a dwelling, which you will as of the 24th. No more than 33% of the existing gross floor area shall be devoted to the home occupation.
Correct.
Correct. There should be no display or storage of finished goods, raw materials, or inventory visible from the street or lot lines. There should be no storage of goods, products produced off-site unless they are used as a raw material to be combined into a finished product, or they are used as the inventory or materials for services performed at an off-site destination.
Wait, no storage.
You guys helped write this.
I think you can just say the number and it's not applicable.
Okay, well, I have to read it. So I figured I might as well read it out loud so everybody hears it. There should be no sales of products or services that are not produced on the premises. True. No advertising on the premises permitted other than a small non-electric sign not to exceed 2 square feet in area.
But you're not having any
I don't want
signage.
any signs.
The premises and building on which the home occupation is conducted may not include or feature any or design not customary in residential use buildings.
No silos.
Where did we come up with this stuff?
No.
Any newly installed or replaced exterior lighting fixture shall be aimed and shielded so that it does not shine upward or produce light beyond the boundaries of the property.
Will you be adding any exterior lighting?
I think there might be one there already. on
Okay.
The garage.
But you're
Well,
not adding any.
And now,
No.
is access to this gonna be through the garage? Is it gonna be a walkway around?
It's gonna have its own entrance. There is gonna be access to the garage, but it's gonna have its own entrance on the side here. So this wall here is the back side of the garage, so you can go into the garage,
Okay,
but this is the.
right, that's what I thought, cause the way I looked at this picture, I was thinking, well, is the garage up here, and then
No,
they're
this
walking
is
up the
the
property
backside.
line, but,
Yeah.
okay, alright. Any addition, alteration, or change must comply in all area, height, bulk, and setback restrictions described by the Easthampton zoning ordinance, which you've addressed, which is a separate.
Should we do that one first then?
Yes, well, on item 10.43.9, Jamie, we've addressed the fact that it is a pre-existing non-conforming accessory structure, but the extension does not,
Why don't you just, after we go through this one, we'll just go through the non-conforming.
well, but because this is, that line item
Yeah,
is pertaining to
I was
the
just,
fact that it has to be compliant
I
to
was
the
just
zoning.
saying, do we need to do 2 special permits, and should we be doing them in that other order, so that we give the okay to the structure, so that the structure is then conforming, so that then when we do the home occupation special permit, it's a conforming
Then
structure
conforming structure.
I think if you're,
in the same night.
We're in cahoots there. I think we're okay.
I think either way you do it, it's fine.
Okay.
Well,
As
if
long,
we
as
make-
long, as long as both get approved. If one doesn't get approved, then you have to go back and revisit.
Then you have to watch me cry.
Okay. Where was I?
Sorry.
Toxic,
43.
toxic, explosive, flammable, combustible, corrosive, radioactive, and/or similar hazardous materials should not be stored or manufactured or used on the premises. Off-site parking, we've already addressed. Traffic associated, shall not place an unreasonable burden on the city roads or surrounding neighborhood, not an issue. No overnight storage of any kind of vehicle on the property is permitted except for those for the personal use of residents of the property. Okay, so those are the standards for all home occupations. For a major home occupation, we met all the standards, and section 12.79 of the Easthampton zoning ordinance. Bring up 12.79. In case of conflict or stricter standards, the stricter standards apply. Oh, that's just the city,
That's the criteria for special permits.
okay, which we will go through once we get there. Or do we have to do that now?
No.
We do
We can
this
do it
separate.
sex.
Yeah. No more than 2
Keep us
non-resident,
on track.
yeah, no more than 2 non-residential resident employees shall be employed to work at a subject property.
No
You're a
less.
one-person operation. Unless otherwise determined by the zoning board of appeals, hours of operation of public include non-residential employees, clients, business visitors, as well as pickups and deliveries of Monday through Friday between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. and on weekends from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yes. It'll be even less than that.
We have to make sure. There should be no increase in traffic in excess of 2 vehicles per hour on average during hours of operation to the public. That's fine. Unless otherwise allowed by the board, only Class 1 and Class 2 vehicles. I don't believe that applies to you.
All the tractor trailers
Yes.
and monster trucks.
No truckers.
Yes. Sometimes.
That's not the
Oh, boy.
The premises and buildings on which the major home occupation is conducted should not be made objectionable or detrimental in any manner, including but not limited to exterior appearance or emission of atmospheric pollution. Odors, gas, fumes, smog, smoke, and dust, electrical disturbance, excessive light, glare, noise, or vibration to the residential character of the neighborhood and/or residential use of the other units in the multifamily structure. As long as the babies don't cry, you're good, right? Okay. So, that is the major home residential occupation. Okay, moving along. Next chapter and verse. Okay. So, once again, most of these, we already read them once this evening. Does anyone find any of the special permit approval criteria that is over and above what was deemed by the major home occupation? I don't think,
I think everything that was not applicable in that case is similarly not applicable in this case.
okay. I'm with you. A through L. Okay. And then can we do this as one
Yeah.
Okay.
whole submission?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Okay. So, having reviewed all that, can I just make the motion as
Do
stated?
you want to do the non-conforming bit too, and then do it all at once?
Okay,
And that's at 10.
that's, no,
Oh,
it's
no,
11-1.
11.
11-1. So, pre-existing non-conforming structures, we've deemed that the addition and modification to the existing accessory building, non-residential structure,
No, I consider it a residential structure, it's easier to get approval,
Yeah.
and it's a permitted residential use, so I use that
Yeah.
criteria.
okay. So non-conforming single or two-family residential structure may be extended, altered, or structurally changed upon the determination of the building commissioner that,
That's paragraph.
okay, if the ZBA,
I read this 3 times, that's why.
okay, I'm glad somebody did. Okay, if the ZBA finds that the proposed changes would not significantly intensify any existing nonconformity or create any new nonconformities, and that the proposed changes would not cause the structure to become substantially more detrimental than the existing nonconforming structure to the neighborhood, it shall grant a special permit for the proposed changes. We all agree with that?
Right.
Okay, having reviewed all of the background information, make a motion to approve the application by Sarah Prawl of 27 Old Pelham Road in Belchertown, seeking a special permit in accordance with section 10.4 and 11.1 of the Easthampton zoning ordinance for a major home occupation, photographer studio, and for extension of the pre-existing non-conforming accessory structure. The subject is located at 36 Briggs Street, parcel ID 145-203, and zoned residential suburban BR10. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You don't have to cry.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to East.
Welcome to
Thank you
Easthampton.
so much. We're so excited
Well,
to
We're
move.
always happy to welcome new people to the town.
And this was the last thing that was just causing me so much stress, because I have a studio on my property now, and I'm so spoiled that I get to have that. And so I'm so grateful to be able to continue that. Thank you so much.
All right.
Good luck,
Alrighty.
good luck to you.
Good luck.
Carry on with, having a baby.
Is it too late for my daughter
No,
on
it's-
Monday? Oh, she comes in with the baby.
Yeah.
We've got
Okay.
We do have other
Yeah,
stuff.
my
We have
daughter did.
5 minutes of
So we
other
still have
stuff.
other business.
Okay.
Okay.
So John and I will write the decision, and then, once it's filed with the city clerk, there'll be a 20-day appeal period,
Okay.
and then once it comes through with no appeals, then you can file that at the
Okay.
registry of deeds.
And if we wanted to start before that happened, it's at our own risk.
Correct.
Gotcha. Have a good night.
You
Good
too?
luck.
Bye. Okay, so, we typically meet on the second Thursday of every month. And for the next 4 months, we're gonna roll the dice and figure out when we can do it. Yeah. So Jamie sent out an email saying when the meetings would be. So July meeting is Tuesday, July 12th. Yes, at 6:30.
And I will not be here.
So we have one person who we know will not be there.
So Jared, Fran, Tony, and John said they can be there, and Maggie said if need be. So
So we have 4.
We have 4.
so we would need you to have 5. So
And
that-
if
If
we
need be.
have 5, can both Fran and I vote? Because that's always been unclear to me.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't, okay,
Yeah.
it's just we can't have 6, okay.
Okay,
So we're okay on July 12th.
July 12th, we're good.
Okay.
August meeting will be on the 4th of August
At
at 6:30.
It's a Thursday, it's a week early.
It's a week earlier than normal.
So Fran had said no, but everyone else said yes.
So we're Tuesday, I'm sorry, just to go back for a second. Tuesday, July 12th at 6:30.
6:30.
And then August is which?
Fourth.
August 4th.
4th at 6:30, Tuesday.
And that was
Thursday.
Thursday.
That's
And that was
a
also at the bottom of the agenda that I had set out.
Yeah.
Right.
That I have.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? It's what I'm writing on.
Classic. Okay, so then the other one is September.
Right.
So I sent out 2 polls and got back different things. It looks like the best day so far is just the regular meeting date, Thursday, September 8th.
Right.
But that currently only Linda, Jared, and Tony can be there. Fran and John will not be there. And
September 8th?
September 8th. That's what you had responded.
I'd have to look again, but I think I can be there.
Okay. And Maggie had said if need be, so.
I can be there.
Okay.
we can add at least 4, we'll be
Well,
okay.
and depending on what the application load is and
Yeah.
things like that, so.
But if we can, but Fran, if you can make it.
I'll get back to you just to confirm it.
Okay.
Just know, we got, late last week in July, that's all, my grandkids are coming in, that's it.
Okay.
So I
So
think
not
we're
like-
okay.
No honeymoons.
No, we-
Anniversaries or anything?
No.
Sorry.
No. But you do have me for the August 4th as a no,
Correct.
August 4th, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But
Okay.
September 8th looks good. Let's confirm it to you.
Yeah.
All right. Any
And
other
then October,
questions?
Everyone, October, we're good? We don't have to go that far right now?
Well, let's not go there.
Good.
That's too far.
It's
Yeah.
okay. It may feel like October out there,
Yeah.
but we're not gonna go there.
Yeah, let's,
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's all, folks.